Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Sunday, the 16th day of March, 2025, and we find ourselves again at the crossroads with respect to what's taking place in Gaza and Iran and the entire Middle East because we have a new phase that is happening right now. And what is it? Well, the war in the Middle East has reached a new phase with extensive, and I mean extensive, U.S. bombing strikes against the Houthis in Yemen. This is a specific warning to Iran that you will be next, as we will discover. Iran responds with its usual empty bluster. We're going to respond accordingly. They really can't do anything. And so it's interesting to see how all this is panning out. We also have a fascinating story that former Iranian military leaders admit that Hamas and Hezbollah are not going to recover from what the Israeli military campaigns have done against them. So Iran is basically losing all its proxies. This is the takeaway from all of this. They're going to be on their own. Now, with respect to Hamas, the U.S. admits Hamas talks have backfired, but the key here is a secret deadline now looms to when Israel will no longer talk, the U.S. will no longer talk, they'll start doing action. We don't know when that's going to be. And so we'll look into that. Now, surprisingly, Israel is sending a delegation to Qatar to continue the talks. Now, this doesn't seem to make any sense because basically Hamas has said this is it. This is our only thing. We're offering one hostage live and four dead bodies, and then we want the ceasefire to resume, and we want the talks to get you to leave Gaza. And Israel, of course, will have nothing of that. And so they're sending a delegation. And with everything else that's going on, particularly with what took place in Yemen last night and today, it seems like they're sending a delegation to give them one more chance. There's going to be one more possible chance for a temporary ceasefire. But Israel wants 11 hostages. And they not only want the 11 hostages, they want half of the bodies of the dead. If they don't get that, it seems all bets are off and the fighting will indeed begin. So they're keeping it close to the vest. But we're seeing how all this is coming together. It's really interesting. And it makes total sense. Now, Witkoff, he's of course, the spokesman, the envoy that Trump has sent to both Iran. Well, actually, they're speaking to Iran, but to go to Qatar to speak to Hamas, and also they've sent him to Russia. Also, he's going to be on American TV today, and he's going to give us the latest where everything now stands because it's kind of a open question of what's going to happen next. So it'd be interesting to see what he says. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a second edition of Breaking News today after he appears on American television on these talk shows and answers some questions, simply because these stories we're doing today, along with a number of other stories we haven't got to, are really going to set the stage for what the Bible says is taking place, it will take place at the time of the end. It is fascinating how it's all coming together. So here's where we're at today. Headline number one, dozens killed in U.S. strikes on Houthi targets across Yemen. They're everywhere. Houthis say 31 were killed in U.S. airstrikes, with reports the numbers could rise. The strikes have targeted the Houthi leadership and sent warning to Iran amidst rising tensions between Washington and Tehran. The Houthis claim the devastating attacks left over 100 people wounded. They continued overnight Sunday with significant intensity, striking multiple locations across the country. The wave of strikes follows President Donald Trump's decision to launch a large scale, we mean large scale military campaign against the Houthis, marking, and here's the key, the opening phase of a broader U.S. offensive against the rebel group, which has resumed threats against Israel and international shipping in the Red Sea. In other words, we're not going to allow this to happen again. The attacks were devastating, a source in Sana'a said. That's the capital of Yemen. They were everywhere, and the casualties are mounting. Now, here's the takeaway. Here's the key, and this is what we have to understand here. According to the Wall Street Journal, officials briefed by the Trump administration said the operation has three primary objectives. Number one, to destroy these Houthi missile launchers that are targeting ships in the Red Sea so the commerce can continue there because it's costing all sorts of money for the ships to go a different direction because of the possibility of attack. They need to end that once and for all. That's one of the objectives. And so that is the first one there. The second is eliminating key Houthi leadership figures. A number of them were killed, we're told, on these overnight strikes. And finally, and the main reason is sending a warning to Iran with a message it could be next. So this is what the Trump administration says we're doing. We're going to knock off their missiles. They're not going to be able to attack the ships that go in the Gulf there anymore. Number two, the key leadership there will be eliminated. And finally, Iran, you will be next. And this is the big message that's there. So these objectives are setting the stage for an eventual attack on Iran. The U.S. and Israel are taking out the proxies of Iran one by one, Hezbollah, Hamas, and now the Houthis. And of course, Syria, with the Assad situation different, with him no longer there, they cannot resupply Hezbollah. So it seems what's happening now is Iran's all their surrogates that were supposed to help them hem in and attack Israel when Iran did this big attack on Israel. Eventually, they've done a couple, but the final one where they would wipe out Israel with all their surrogates, it's not possible now because the surrogates are themselves being wiped out. Now, Iran, as usual, makes its empty threats. The Iran Guards chief vows decisive reprisal against any attacks after Trump's warning. This is from the Times of Israel, and this is laughable. The U.S. as U.S. president demands Iran in their support for the Houthis. The general says the group is the representative of the Yemenis, and it makes decisions independently from Tehran. In other words, we don't have anything to do with the Houthis. They make their own decisions, which is absolute nonsense. Iran finances them to send all the weapons there. So it's Iran that's doing this. And so the Iranian Guards chief, there's this guy again, his name's Salami. We always call him Baloney. He denounced Trump's threats in a televised speech on Sunday, adding that Iran will not wage war, but if anyone threatens, it will give appropriate, decisive, and conclusive responses. Nonsense. They can't do any of the above. They're basically neutralizing their air defenses. Most of the great number of their missiles have already been launched. And so right now they're very vulnerable. So the threats are meaningless. Now, what's also fascinating with this, an interesting story that came out, a former IRGC, that's Iran, the Revolutionary Corps, their military, their officer spoke out now against the Islamic regime in a rare interview they talked with Israeli media. And the testimonies provide a very rare window into the fractures within Iran's military and growing discontent among its ranks. And of course, there's got to be discontent where all its surrogates are going by the wayside, and Iran's own military cannot meet the challenge that Israel, and of course, Israel, the U.S. could do. Here's a story. Several Iranian officers do not believe, and this is the key takeaway, that Hamas and Hezbollah will not recover in strength. They don't believe they're going to recover in strength, and have also spoken out against the Islamic Republic regime in a rare interview published on Saturday. So they don't think that they're going to recover in any strength, any way, shape, or form. So in other words, these surrogates are lost. A man named Javad, he's a former Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps operative. He spoke publicly for the first time to Israeli media, revealing his past involvement in suppressing protests and his recruitment into the extremist militia there. He shared details into the Islamic Republic's reaction to the assassination of the leader Haniya in Tehran of July last year. Remember, Haniya was there to greet the new president of Iran. And what happened there? He was assassinated by the Israelis, and the man said they can't believe how precise it was. Mossad knew where he was staying, exact room number, shows how deep the Israeli intelligence is, has penetrated Iran. And so Iran, what they're realizing is they're outmatched here, and particularly with the U.S. with an administration, the Trump administration, that will weigh in with weaponry here, with missiles against Iran if necessary. The military there recognizes that this is a lost battle. It's really a losing cause. The problem is it's not rational, their response, because again, they've talked themselves into believing they've got a spiritual, basically, what do you call it? A spiritual gift from Allah that you're going to win. You're going to destroy the big Satan, the U.S., the little Satan, Israel. And so you have a destiny there that's yours. And so you just keep plowing forward no matter what happens. That's what they've really convinced themselves to believe. And the military is a little more realistic. They're saying, look, we've got not a whole lot left here. And so we'll keep an eye on that. Now, what's also fascinating, we'll go to these discussions about the hostages there in the ceasefire with Israel and Hamas. Washington admits Hamas talks had backfired, and now a secret deadline looms. This is from Ynet News. As Hamas refuses to release more than one live hostage, the U.S. now views past negotiations as a mistake. Witkoff has set a secret deadline. This is the key, a secret deadline when mediators, here's what they're proposing. You give us 11 live hostages, 16 bodies, and we'll give you a ceasefire extension through Ramadan and Passover. If not, military action is coming. So how soon the deadline, we're not told, but we may know a little bit more about that later today, as we'll see in a minute. Now, what's fascinating here, there's another headline. Netanyahu has instructed the Israeli hostage team to prepare for more talks on the Witkoff proposal. You would think about when they admit the talks have fallen apart, when there's nothing going on, why send another team there to Doha? Why send that? And it looks like with everything else going on, particularly with what's happened today in Yemen, this is why this is so important with the Houthis. They're given this message. You see what we've done to the Houthis in Yemen? You see what's happening with Hezbollah? Well, this is going to happen to you, Hamas, and Iran is going to be next. So you either release these hostages, these at least 11 living hostages, and half the bodies of the dead, or as Donald Trump says, none of you are going to come out of this alive because you can see the proverbial handwriting on the wall. So this is fascinating. So it seems how it's all working together. That's why Netanyahu and Israel's playing this close to the vest, not explaining why they're doing something like this. Well, you put this in combination with the attack on the Houthis and the message to Iran that the end is near, gang. So you've got to either now give us the hostages or that's it. Now, what's really interesting, Witkoff is our last headline. This is from the Times of Israel. He's going to actually appear today on U.S. networks after the ceasefire talks in Doha. He's been there in Doha. And so the Trump administration's Middle East envoy will do a round of interviews today on U.S. television, the news channels, after mediating talks in Qatar last week aimed at extending a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. Remember, he's also stopped in Moscow and Azerbaijan talking with Russian. So we'll get some insight now on what's going on with Russia, Ukraine, insight where we're at with Israel, Hamas, and the ceasefire hostage release. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens now. So again, the Witkoff proposal is seemingly still on the table, and this is the one Israel is insisting on. The U.S., it seems, is insisting on. You do this, you don't play any games with us, or else all bets are off. And so it's going to be fascinating to find out what he says today. So hopefully we'll get some more answers from the interviews that he does, and we will do another program later today talking about what he has said and giving the latest, information on what's going on there and where we're at right now. Plus, we have a number of other stories that are very, very important we haven't been able to get to because so much is going on. So we'll be back today later with a second breaking news once Witkoff does his interviews and see what we can conclude here, along with Israel, where they're at. As all these things are coming together now, it's very, very interesting now. It's all happening right now. And so it seems the proverbial push has come to shove and something is going to break very, very soon, one way or another. Now, what it'll be, again, only God knows. I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again later today. Until then, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.